Suns fired head coach Mike Budenholzer after just one season with the team.
What the hell is the excuse for the Phoenix Suns? Kevin Durant is there, averaging 27 a game. Devin Booker is there, averaging 26 a game.
Other 29 GMs, 26 of them would trade their whole team for our whole team and our draft picks and everything as is. Like, the house is not on fire. We're in great position. It's not hard to fix. It's not like we're like, hey, we don't have enough talent to win a championship. We have enough talent to win a championship.
One of one right now. Of the 30 teams in the league, the only team that isn't in contention for the postseason, the lottery, or control of a first-round pick is the Suns.
I mean, saying it respectfully, I don't know how teams are going to guard us.
This story does not start in Phoenix. It starts in Brooklyn, where another team that Kevin Durant ruined laid in waste. Because in February of 2023, Kyrie Irving was traded to the Dallas Mavericks, and suddenly Kevin Durant is stranded once again, alone on a team that's clearly no longer contending. As in typical Kevin Durant fashion, he scans the landscape of the NBA and finds the most ready-made contender that needs him.
Late night on the West Coast, early morning on the East Coast. The Nets they're no more, at least as they started this season. Kyrie got a win in his Dallas debut, and Kevin Durant is headed to Phoenix. Adrian Ward.
That ends up being the Phoenix Suns, a team just 2 years removed from an NBA Finals run, led by prime Devin Booker and an aging but still playmaking steady Chris Paul. It felt like a smart move in the moment. Kevin Durant wanted a new challenge, Phoenix wanted a new edge, and just like that, the Suns sent Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, Jay Crowder, and 4 first-round picks in exchange for Kevin Durant. It was a bold move, and yet a dangerous one. Because with that trade, Phoenix had gutted their depth, handed away its future, and put every ounce of belief into the idea that Kevin Durant would complete the puzzle. In the short term, it looked like it may have worked, because Durant won his first 3 games in Phoenix. He looked comfortable, efficient, and looked like he'd been there for years. But then, foreshadowing in the worst kind of way. He sprained his ankle in warm-ups and missed 3 weeks. Even then, when he returned, he led the Suns to 5 straight wins. There was a sense that this was all going to be worth it by the end of it. The Suns entered the 2023 playoffs with optimism. They faced a Clippers team missing Paul George, and Kawhi Leonard had only played 2 games. The Suns took care of business, winning in 5. But that second-round matchup against the Denver Nuggets, the eventual champions, was the moment the illusions began to crack. Durant did not look like Durant. He wasn't getting to the rim with ease. The shot wasn't falling consistently, and more importantly, the offensive fit between him and Booker didn't feel natural. It felt like overlapping skill sets rather than complementary ones. Things started to look forced. The Nuggets eliminated them in 6 games, while Booker was good. KD's limitations and inefficiencies were hard to ignore. That offseason, instead of stabilizing the team or running it back with some adjustments, Phoenix blew it up again. Chris Paul was traded, and the Suns pivoted toward more offense, because apparently the lesson from losing to Denver wasn't that they needed structure or defense, but they needed another scorer. That scorer ended up being Bradley Beal, and at face value, sounds like a dream addition. A silky 3-level scorer, a guy who averaged 30 points per game, but the reality was far less glamorous. Beal's $250 million contract, complete with a no-trade clause, meant that once Phoenix made this move, there was no turning back. His game overlapped heavily with Booker and KD. He wasn't a defender, he wasn't a primary playmaker, and his injury history was slowly stacking up. Still, the Suns went all in. They also moved away from DeAndre Ayton finally, sending him to Portland in exchange for Jusuf Nurkic. Nurkic was older, slower, and less dynamic, presumably more team-oriented. The rest of the roster was filled out with minimum contracts and veterans. Eric Gordon, Yuta Watanabe, Drew Eubanks, Bol Bol, Nazir Little. Not terrible moves, but none of it felt like a real plan. This team was not balanced. It was 3 stars, no depth, no defense, and clearly no identity. And the coaching hire only raised more eyebrows. After firing Monty Williams, who got the Suns to the NBA Finals, they hired Frank Vogel. A defensive-minded coach was now leading a team that didn't defend at all. From day one, the team felt cursed. Beal missed the first 7 games. Booker missed 8 of the first 10. Durant was forced to carry a patchwork squad through the early months of the season. Despite that, they started 12-8, and the team and the fans hung on to the saying, just wait until we're healthy. But that day never came. Beal missed 29 games. Durant missed a handful of games. Booker played the most, but even then he wasn't immune. The Suns limped their way into the playoffs as the 6th seed, where they faced off against the 3-seeded 56-win Minnesota Timberwolves. There was still some hope. On paper, Phoenix had more top-end talent, and in Game 1, Durant put up 31. But the rest of the trio struggled. They were blown out. And in Game 2, it was even worse. Booker and Beal couldn't hit anything. The three combined to shoot 18 for 45 from the field. And in Game 3, even though all three of them scored 20 plus points and Beal had 28, they still lost. And in Game 4, to avoid a sweep, Booker had 49, Durant had 33, but Beal only had 9 points on 4 of 13 shooting. The Suns were swept, and the super team experiment didn't even win them one game. But what did the Suns do? They fired Frank Vogel after just 1 year. He was the scapegoat. He was blamed for trying to make a championship level team out of what was essentially just 3 scorers and a bunch of spare parts. They replaced him with Mike Budenholzer, another defensive first coach, and as if the problem had been strategy and not roster construction. The offseason brought a few practical moves. Tyus Jones and Monte Morris were signed to bring playmaking, and they drafted Ryan Dunn, a much-needed defensive piece. But the biggest issue was rim protection. It remained unaddressed. Nurkic was still the starting center, and behind the scenes, tension was starting to brew. Phoenix actually started the next season 9-3, and for a brief second, it looked like they had figured it out. Then Durant got hurt. They lost 5 straight games. He came back. They won 3 out of 4. Then he got hurt again, and the cycle continued. Time the calendar hit January, reports were already leaking. Beal and Nurkic didn't like Budenholzer's coaching. Bud had benched Beal and asked him to play like, word for word, Drew Holiday. He asked a man who was traded here to score the ball to focus primarily on playing defense and setting the others up. That was going to be a recipe for disaster from the very start, as Bradley Beal cannot defend. He wasn't brought here to defend, and he never planned on defending in his entire career. Spent all years in Washington being a below-average defender, and in later years in his career, that is not going to change. Bradley Beal remained professional, dropped 25 points in his first game off the bench, but he clearly wasn't happy. Nurkic started popping up in trade rumors, so did Beal, and even Durant was reportedly being quietly shopped at the deadline. And by the beginning of February, Phoenix was 26-26. Mediocrity, no chemistry, no identity, and worst of all, no momentum. And in February, they made a move that would be trading Jusuf Nurkic for Cody Martin, essentially just getting off of Jusuf Nurkic and not having to worry about him anymore, because just a month prior they traded for Nick Richards, and that certainly was the gateway for them to trade away Nurkic. But it wasn't enough. March was supposed to be their final push for the play-in. With injuries to Kyrie, AD, De'Aaron Fox, and Victor Wembanyama, the path to the play-in spot was right there. The Suns responded with a 4-game win streak in the month of March, only to immediately follow it up by an 8-game losing streak. Durant got hurt again, and just like that, their season ended. Phoenix finished 36-46. They missed the playoffs, missed the play-in, and despite relatively decent health from KD and Booker, it was clear that this team just didn't work. Beal's contract and no trade clause effectively locked them down into purgatory. Frank Vogel was gone, Mike Budenholzer was gone, 2 head coaches in 2 years. They had no flexibility, no cap space, no young talent, and no defensive core to build around. The big 3 of Booker, Durant, and Beal never gelled, not because they weren't talented, but because alone talent isn't enough. Super teams didn't work because sometimes stars don't mesh together too well. They work with pieces that complement them, and the Suns never had that. When there's trust, when there's sacrifice, and Phoenix didn't have that either. They gambled everything on talent and ignored every warning along the way. They chased a title without building a foundation, with Kevin Durant just getting traded to the Houston Rockets for Dillon Brooks, Jalen Green, and the number 10 overall pick, left behind a franchise with no picks, no depth, and more questions than answers. Kevin Durant yet again laid waste to another organization.